So thank you all for your time and joining us today for our QTS Quick Inform educational webinar on creating more value from your SCCM platform. My name is Neil Rosenberg. I'm the president of QTS and will be leading today's call, and we are fortunate to have a great guest speaker, Wally Mead. We'll talk a little bit about Wally's background in a moment, who's going to present a couple of different topics around extending System Center Config Manager. A couple of notes: we are recording today's webinar so that we can share it out with folks after the event. So we are going to hold questions until the end. So please make a note of your questions or use the questions section of the GoToWebinar client. If anyone is having trouble with the audio portion, there is a separate dial-in bridge as noted on this slide. So with that, we will get started. And again, we are presenting today on creating more value from your SCCM platform. So I would assume that everyone in the audience either has a System Center Configuration Manager deployed or is thinking about deploying System Center Configuration Manager, which is an amazingly powerful tool if you use it the right way. And that's something that we do as a company, QTS, helping organizations to deploy and leverage the System Center suite for their IT operations management. Some quick background about QTS. We are a Microsoft Gold Partner and locally managed partner of the year for the New York Metro District, 2 of the last 3 years, with very strong competencies across a lot of Microsoft technologies, but System Center in particular is one of our strong suites. We also are very strong with knowledge transfer and working collaboratively with our customers to help with education and building an understanding of how to use these tools. So happy to engage with you folks after the event and explore how we can potentially help you. So that's some background on QTS, and I'll come back and talk a little bit about some of the areas we've specifically extended Config Manager in the past and give you some ideas. Want to talk for a moment about SCCM and the core capabilities of the product. So System Center Config Manager has been around for a long, long time. It just had a different name in the early days, and that was SMS, or Systems Management Server. And SMS 1.0 was released back around 94, I believe. We did an early deployment at a large New York bank, so we've been working with it for a long, long time. And it's always been a very powerful product in terms of automating the process of managing endpoints. The core capabilities of the product are hardware and software inventory and the ability to run reports and do analysis on that inventory. The ability to remote control, so it's a great help desk tool for remotely controlling systems and supporting end users. For operating system deployment and imaging, and this is where it gets really, really powerful, is the integration of these 3 items: the operating system deployment and imaging, so taking Microsoft's MDT, or Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, and bringing it to the next level through integration of the imaging piece with the ability to do Microsoft patch management, and we'll talk about third party in a little bit, as well as software distribution and delivery, which can be push distribution, it can be user self-service. There's a lot of capabilities, particularly in the latest release. So those are kind of the core elements of SCCM that most organizations start with, but there's so much potential for SCCM to be this single pane of glass, this platform that the IT organization can use to optimize the user experience and drive consistency and productivity, both for end users and also for the IT support organization. And that's part of what we want to start to unlock today, is where you can take SCCM beyond the basics. So we're very fortunate today to have Wally Mead from Cireson as our guest presenter at our educational webinar. Wally has been with Microsoft for 22 years before joining Cireson, and was in the SMS SCCM product group for a large chunk of that time. So very deeply knowledgeable with this product as it's gone through its multiple evolutions. Wally is a frequent speaker and educates customers and partners and organizations globally and moderates forums and is just a tremendous overall resource and base of knowledge around System Center generally, but SCCM with very particular focus. So with that, looking forward to hearing what he has to say, and I'll turn the stage over to Wally Mead from Cireson.
Well, thank you very much, Neil. Appreciate it, and we absolutely do value our relationship and partnership with QTS. So it's a fantastic. So anyway, thank you for the introduction. And as Neil mentioned, I was with Microsoft for 22 years, and the last 15 of those was with the Configuration Manager product group. But even before that, I was doing training classes on SMS before it was called SMS 1.0. So back in the early 90s, I started working with the product in pre-release versions and so on. So been around for a long time, worked with a lot of customers, and decided to make the jump for Microsoft over to Cireson a year and a half ago, and absolutely loving it. One of the reasons I did that is to help provide some additional value beyond what Configuration Manager gives you in the box. As Neil mentioned, extremely powerful solution, but with that comes some complexity that you may very well need to have additional assistance to gain the full value out of the product that you really want to get. That's where QTS can help you out in that endeavor. So what I want to talk about today is how you can take that base knowledge that you have and the base asset capabilities that you have with Configuration Manager and how you can extend that with some of the solutions that Cireson provides. So I'm going to start off with just a couple of quick slides on who Cireson is, then we'll jump into our actual topic of the day. So Cireson's built on 3 different pillars. Those first 3 pillars that you see, service management, asset management, and identity management, are all revolve around software. We are primarily a software-based company providing solutions around System Center. So we've been founded on System Center, and that's all we work on is System Center resources. So we have service management, so IT service management capabilities. We have asset management, which is what we're going to talk about today. We have identity management. So if you have an environment where you have end users that forget their passwords, get locked out, and they have to contact help desk to get their passwords reset, we have a solution that can help facilitate the end users resetting their passwords without involving help desk. So it can help save a lot of those calls that you get and the expense related to password resets. We do have a consulting firm branch in our environment. However, in this scenario with QTS partnership, you wouldn't be needing that because QTS can handle all the pure System Center deployments as well as the deployment of all the Cireson solutions, those first 3 pillars. And then as Neil mentioned, I'm on the partner and community enablement team, spreading knowledge and helping educate customers and partners on the Cireson platform. So where Cireson fits in, I'm going to build this out. As you can see, we sit at the top of the stack. So Cireson solutions sit on top of System Center. System Center is a fantastic engine. It provides a lot of great capabilities. Specifically today, we'll talk primarily around Configuration Manager and service management. And then on top of that, obviously when you have your System Center environment, you can either be an on-premise environment through Hyper-V, or you can be Azure-based. You can be sitting up in the cloud. Our product and System Center works equally well through either on-prem or a hosted environment. However, we think as a company you'll get better value by moving your workloads from an on-premise implementation up into a cloud-based, Azure-based implementation, which QTS can help you out with that moving of those workloads. We moved our workloads a year or so ago, so we're fully running on top of Azure. You get great benefits with all the cool things that Azure provides to you. So that just shows you the stack and where we sit in. Now our platform, the last slide on Cireson, and we'll jump into today's topic. So we have a business management solution, which is an entire suite of technologies. The service management and essentials management streams in those suites help provide some additional administrative as well as end user functionality around service management. The asset management stream is what we're going to talk about today, and I'll show you the benefits of what it can do for taking configuration manager data, pulling it into a solution that gives you true lifecycle management of your hardware and software assets. So those are the three different streams we have in the business management solution. We also recently released our identity management stream, which has that password reset app, has our first offering in the identity management solution. And then we'll be coming out with service automation, providing some additional capabilities for you to integrate with TFS connectors and project connectors and some other additional automation capabilities. We also do provide some free community apps. Those apps you can just go to the Cireson website, download, and start utilizing without any cost involved. One of those apps is one of those that I'm going to talk about today, and that is our Remote Manage app. So our topics of today, we're going to do a couple minutes talking about how you can help your analysts with Cireson Remote Manage app. And then we'll jump into how you can extend asset management beyond what Configuration Manager provides to you to providing true asset management with the Cireson Asset Management solution for Service Manager. So Neil mentioned this is one of the core capabilities and functionalities of Configuration Manager, that being remote control, the ability of accessing or connecting up to remote end user computers to do troubleshooting. And that's certainly one of the things here. It's the next to last bullet on my slide. But your analysts do a lot more things with Configuration Manager to support your end users. They use the Configuration Manager console to look up UDA relationships. So when an end user calls help desk, they don't necessarily know their computer name. They just know that my name is Wally. Your help desk person can then utilize Configuration Manager console to find the computer that Wally's sitting at. So that's called user device affinity. Look up inventory details. So I'm having problems installing an application, and you can utilize the ConfigMan console and reports to verify that my hardware is sufficient enough, adequate, supported for that application I'm trying to install. And maybe it's not. Maybe I don't have enough memory. Maybe my processor's not powerful enough. Viewing my deployment status. So when I'm trying to install a piece of software or patches, I can look and see what the status of that is and where I'm at and see if I have problems. Verifying client health and activity status. This is a great capability for you to verify that the end user's computer is actually active on the network and is listed as a healthy client. If it's not, then obviously it can't receive patches, it can't receive the software that you're trying to deploy as an administrator. Initiating those remote control sessions to connect up to that client computer. Adding a computer to a collection in order to get software. So I call up and say, hey, I'm trying to run this software, I don't have it. A traditional thing that an analyst would do is take my computer or my user, drop it into the collection that has software targeted to it. Very, very commonly done. Well, those all involve the Configuration Manager console. So one of the things that Cireson has produced for you is one of those free apps, and it's called the Cireson Remote Manage app. The cool thing is that you can do all those functions that we just talked about, all those things that a help desk person needs to do to support end users without them having to have the Configuration Manager console at all. So it's a standalone app that connects up to the Configuration Manager database as well as connects up to the client computer to provide a lot of those same details that you get out of the ConfigMan console, plus some additional things. So I can view all the computer information of the local client computer. I can initiate some of those common client actions such as retrieving policies or forcing a hardware inventory cycle or checking my patch status and so on. I can initiate common computer tasks like connecting up to the log files for Configuration Manager, looking at $, so I can look and see how much disk space is available on the client. I can add and remove clients from collections. So if I have the rights in Config Manager, I can still drop them in a collection or remove them from a collection as appropriate. I can view, repair, and install software that is targeted to that computer or already is installed on that computer. I can verify the software that is targeted to that computer within their Software Center user interface without having to connect up to that client through a remote control session and looking at Software Center. I can view it in this app. I can look at my software update status, view what software updates are available, which ones are installed, which ones are missing. I can view, start, or terminate processes and services. You can also look at printers and look at the print status of that computer, what printers it's hooked up to. I can remotely reboot or shut down a client. As you know, oftentimes when you're supporting an end user, they may have done some patching and their patches now require a restart. I can initiate that from the Remote Manage app. I can view the resultant set of policies from Group Policy. I can access computer management, user management, and event viewer to look at the details, look at all the status, look at those messages and events that are generated on a remote client computer. I can launch off remote control from this tool as well as remote desktop or even a PowerShell session. You shouldn't have to do this, but you can also verify, repair, or reset WMI. Now this should be taken care of automatically with the Configuration Manager client if you're running ConfigMan 2012 or later, but you can do that as well from this tool. I can verify system uptime and if there's a reboot pending status, which is very important to know whether or not I can apply any additional software updates, because I may not be able to because there's a reboot pending status on it. And then of course you can identify the logged on user, so who's actually logged on to that computer itself. The cool thing is that I can do all this without the analyst having to have access to the ConfigMan console. So that reduces some of the load on the Configuration Manager environment. It also makes it easier for me when I upgrade my Configuration Manager infrastructure. So if I go from ConfigMan 2012 R2 to the R2 SP1 platform, that's a new version of the ConfigMan console. Well, if my help desk analysts aren't utilizing the ConfigMan console, I don't have to worry about remotely upgrading all their admin consoles. They still just continue to utilize the Remote Manage app. So let's go ahead and jump over and show you real quickly what that looks like. So if I switch over to this virtual machine, this is my Configuration Manager console. I'm going to minimize it. And I've already got the Remote Manage app installed. So you go to Start, go to All Apps, and here you see it listed in your Start menu. It's listed in the Cireson Program Group and Remote Manage app. Oops, and when I zoom out, I lose that context. So we'll go back in, we'll launch off the tool. It asks me for the client I want to connect to. I want to connect to a client named Client 7. My site, and this is my site server, or really what it is an SMS provider computer, and it's on a computer called Primary. And I just hit enter, and bingo, I can tell immediately that it's connected up to my site because I'm able to see the collections this computer is a member of. So this is saying that Client 1, or Client 7, sorry, is a member of those 3 different collections. And I'm able to view some basic client information. Its IP address, who's logged on, or the top console user, its operating system, its architecture, CPU, memory. Down at the bottom, if we're able to connect up to the client successfully, then you'll see a whole bunch of PowerShell commands that are being issued to connect up to that client and provide additional information that we'll view here momentarily. Upper left, you can see we have some of those common actions. So initiating hardware inventory, pulling policies, checking or initiating a patch scan, and so on. I can initiate all those from this tool. Down below, I can connect up to the ConfigMan log file directory, so I don't have to guess where it is. We'll figure it out. Open up the log, or $share, repair or reset the client, uninstall the ConfigMan client, which we don't hopefully ever have to do. The real power of it is the fact that I can go ahead and add that computer to a collection. So I can go ahead and add to a collection, and let's say if I want to put him in all servers, I just drop down in all servers and then click add to collection, and you see down below in our logging, successfully added to the collection. So now when I go ahead and refresh, momentarily this should pop up and tell me that I'm a member of the all servers collection here as well. There we go. So now if there was any software targeted to all servers, I would get that software. And you can easily remove a computer from a collection as well, provided that you have the rights to do so. So if I, as an administrator, have the rights to add, remove, then those capabilities occur. Now across the top are all the different nodes or tabs that you have. So this is the action and tools. If I go to installed software, this is looking at add, remove programs on that client computer and showing me what software is installed. I could take a piece of software, I could right-click, and I have an option to uninstall or repair that software, just as if I was sitting on the client, going to the control panel, programs and features, and then my programs. Software Center. If I have any software targeted to that computer that appears in Software Center, I could go ahead and verify for here from the Software Center tab. I could go ahead and pick a piece of software. I could right-click and say install it. If it was installed and able to be uninstalled, I have an uninstall action here. It tells me this top one, the ConfigMan 2012 Toolkit R2, is not required on the client. It's filtered out basically because of platform requirements that are listed. So it has some great capabilities here. Available updates. If there are any software updates that are targeted to this computer, I could view those. I could right-click on one and say install that update or install all required updates. As you can see the buttons here. This environment, I don't have any available. But I can view my patch status. So here's all my updates that are installed on my client computer. Let me move this over a little bit so you can see more data. So I can see all the appropriate data, the articles, the bulletins, the status, scan time, and so on. I can click on missing updates, and it will give me a count as well as show me all the software updates that the client thinks that it's missing in that environment. And again, if they are targeted, I could go back to the available updates, select those updates, and go ahead and have them installed. Processes, I can see process status, so what processes are running on the client. I could go ahead and search for processes, such as if I search for Notepad, not there, but I can go ahead and tell it to start Notepad, and click Start. And now we'll go ahead and start Notepad remotely on that client computer. It's highlighted in green because it was a change in status since when I first refreshed this guy. I could go ahead and kill that process as well if I want to. So I could go right-click and kill Notepad to get rid of it. I can do the same thing for printers, look at the printer status. I look at the services they're running on that computer, and if I go to something like SMS, I can see SMS agent host, and you have the ability of starting and stopping services appropriately. And some of the more power comes in the last tab, which is the other tab. Here I can initiate a reboot on my computer or a shutdown. So I click reboot, it says I got 30 seconds to make up my mind or change my mind. The end user is getting a message on his computer now saying his computer is going to restart in less than a minute. I'll go ahead and click cancel, and now it's not going to reboot. But I can reboot, I can shut down remote computers. I could go ahead and go to something like user management, and I can go ahead and look at users on that remote computer. Computer management event viewer as well. I can launch off a PowerShell session, remote desktop session, remote control session, group policy, look at the resultant set of policies on that client computer. And it will go ahead and pull down on my client and give me a resultant set of policies when it's all done. And then WMI actions. I can go ahead and verify, repair, or reset WMI. And then, of course, I have the other capabilities I saw here, uptime, if there's a reboot pending status, which is very important for patch status. So all these are cool capabilities that are available to you, and you don't have to have the ConfigMan console installed. This will run on any client computer. It supports ConfigMan 2007 as well as ConfigMan 2012. And for my testing so far, it seems to work perfectly fine on Configuration Manager vNext. That's due out before the end of this calendar year. So that's great capabilities for you, even more than what some people can get out of the Configuration Manager console, and again, keeps the admin guys, your help desk guys, out of the ConfigMan console. So that's a free tool you can go ahead and download and start playing around with today. Now from here, let's go ahead and talk about asset management. So Configuration Manager gives you some great asset management capabilities out of the box for your Windows computers, for your Linux devices, Linux, Unix, for your Macintosh, for your mobile devices. So Configuration Manager, you obviously install a client agent on Windows, on Linux, Unix, on Macs. And once you've got that client agent installed, then you get hardware inventory. You can go ahead and get some software inventory, installed apps. If you want to integrate with Microsoft Intune, that provides the enterprise mobile management data capabilities, I can now take mobile devices, Windows Phone, iOS, Android, that might be wanting to access my corporate data. I can enroll them through Microsoft Intune. With the integration with Configuration Manager, those mobile devices will appear in my same console as my Windows, my Linux, my Unix, my Macs, and now the mobile devices. So as Neil mentioned earlier, that single pane of glass allows me to manage all these various different types of devices through one console, uniquely, because there's unique things about how you interact with each of these different clients. Different sets of data gets reported by them, different types of patching or software distribution for them and policies and settings, but you can manage them all through one console. So some of the basics for asset management: user device affinity. You want to know, you need to know who is the owner of that device. So you can associate a user with a device. For Windows clients, you have to have the config-man client on there. For mobile devices, it happens automatically when you enroll with Microsoft Intune. Once you've got that done, you have hardware inventory capabilities for your Windows, your Macs, your Linux, Unix devices with that client agent installed. For mobile devices, once they've been enrolled through Microsoft Intune with that integration, then your hardware inventory will flow down. Software inventory as a feature, actually I generally tell you not to use software inventory itself. It's pretty invasive on computers, on your clients. It's not something that you normally need to have done. Instead, you want to rely on installed applications, which is retrieved as part of hardware inventory for your Windows devices, your Linux, your Unix, your Macs, and your mobile devices. So that's going to be a better way for you getting that list of software that's installed. Besides, those other types of clients don't even have a software inventory agent. So you don't even really need to have it for your Windows clients either. If you have additional custom registry information you want, there's some of the MVPs wrote a utility called RegKey2Moff. You could utilize that tool to capture custom registry information that you're utilizing and pull that into hardware inventory, so then you can do reporting off of it. As Neil mentioned, great reporting capabilities once you've got the data in the config-man database. So again, once your client has been installed, now you can go ahead and manage the asset. For Windows clients, being Windows full operating system, you have another feature that we'll look at called Asset Intelligence. This gives you much better capabilities of identifying software that's installed on your client computers. You can also implement software metering as a way of validating which clients are actually running which pieces of software. So hardware inventory with Asset Intelligence can tell you what software you have installed. Software metering can tell you which software is being utilized. Then there's a ton of different great capabilities, which Neil mentioned in one of those previous slides, on software distribution, client health, the remote control capabilities, operating system deployment, patching, and so on, which we're not covering in here because we're just looking at asset management. But tons of great features there, as Neil already mentioned for you. Okay, a couple of additional details before we jump into another demo. User device affinity, it's important for you to tie the user to the device. So if you have an environment where users have a specific piece of hardware that they always use, it's a great feature so that to have you tie that user to that device so your help desk analyst can look at the username and find the computer. Because again, your end users don't always know what their computer name is or how to find it. Because a lot of times organizations will have some asset number that they use or just a naming scheme. It's not Wally's PC. So it's going to be something more like a ABC123 is the computer name, and may not be easy for an end user to figure that out. That lets you see the device and software owners and users. Hardware inventory, as Neil mentioned, one of the core capabilities of the technology. Configuration Manager, been there forever, ever since 1.0. Great way of finding what your hardware attributes are, and now your add remove programs application inventory, and for your Windows devices, your list additional information for applications that are installed. Very easy to extend through WMI or registry attributes and pull that into your hardware inventory either with custom MOF settings or through the reg key to MOF tool that we talked about earlier. Again, for software inventory, I generally discourage you from using it. Very seldom do you need to implement software inventory itself. It's actually enabled in the product in ConfigMan 2012, but there are no inventory rules for it, so it doesn't really do anything for you. Now, there's a ton of reports in Configuration Manager. Depending upon the release and the version you may have up to 470 reports in different categories for hardware and software, whether it's attributes of an individual device, whether it's attributes for a collection of devices such as operating systems and service packs, whether it's the software you have installed, whether it's software that has been or hasn't been run for a period of time, or clients that can't install pieces of software due to lack of resources, not enough processor, memory, disk space, whatever. So tons of different reporting capabilities. The key is getting the data in the ConfigMan database, then you can do your reporting on it. And that's where you have the client agent installed for most of the platforms, and then the integration with Microsoft Intune for your mobile devices so they get that data into the database. Now you can do your management and your reporting of those resources. So that's all great capabilities. However, Configuration Manager's asset management capabilities has some limitations. So it's great for the basics. However, it doesn't provide any advanced asset management capabilities such as license management. So you can go ahead through Asset Intelligence and you can import license quantities that you feel you're entitled to, either through a CSV file, or if you're a volume license customer, you can get a volume license statement in an XML format or XLS format spreadsheet, and you can import that into Configuration Manager. That will let you do reporting on what you think you have versus what Config Manager says you have, but there's no license blocking, and even the product group, Configuration Manager product group and the TechNet docs tell you not to rely on this license capability for true-up reporting. You need to have some additional functionality there to do true-up reporting. So it's not really designed for that. Software normalization. As you see in the demo that I'll do here in a minute, the database is great. It has, like the Asset Intelligence database, is somewhere around 180 to 200,000 applications in it. But what you'll see back is you'll see a dozen, maybe dozens of references to a single piece of software. It's not normalized down into something that you can truly manage well, and that's very frustrating for administrators. It doesn't always handle suite versus individual products in the suite very well. It's gotten better over the years, but still not fantastic for it. Sometimes it's had some issues with CPU licensed products. Excuse me, I forgot to warn you guys, I got a cold the other day, so I'm going to try, and if I feel a cough coming on, like I didn't there, I'm trying to mute myself and so you guys don't hear me cough. But if I go blank for a second, it's probably because I'm coughing, and I'll be right back to you. So there are definitely some limitations in Configuration Manager asset management capabilities. There's no financial data. There's no ability really to tie contracts or vendors or purchase orders or cost centers to your assets, either your hardware assets or your software assets. Yeah, there's a couple things you can do that I'll show you in my demo, but it's not really designed for it very effectively. No real asset location identification. ConfigMan does great on reporting IP subnets, but how many people really speak IP subnets? If you see a 192.168.5.0, do you really know where that is? Probably not. Some of you may very well, but the vast majority of us aren't going to know where that is. But if we see NYC data center, we definitely know where that resource is. It's in the New York City data center. You can also see, obviously, your domain, maybe an OU, but that isn't necessarily as tied down or as localized as you want it to be. You can only manipulate the data in one console, being the Configuration Manager console, and then you have very limited capabilities. So once the data is in the database, you don't really manipulate it. I mean, the manipulation is done on the client end before it gets inventoried and put into the database. So you have more discovery or inventory information that's not really manageable outside of just reporting capabilities. So a lot of great capabilities in Configuration Manager, just not as much in the advanced capabilities you want. So let's jump over and just take a moment to look at some of those things, and then we'll get into some of the better capabilities for you. So here's my config man environment, and one of the things you want to look at, and I'm trying to go slow here, is obviously you want to have your clients in your environment. You want to have them listed as clients, yes, so the client agent's there. You want to make sure that they're all active. It doesn't do you any good to try and manage computers that aren't active. And you want to have currently updated hardware inventory and heartbeat discovery data. So you want to make sure that your clients are communicating actively. One of the cool capabilities of the ConfigMan product is the ability of looking at your client health. So you can go to client status, and you can see very, very quickly what your client activity rate is. And here it says I have 5 clients and they're all active, which is great. You may not be 100% active, but certainly you can have more than 5 clients in your environment. But you want this pie chart to be very, very green as opposed to red, because green obviously is active versus the inactive clients. And you can only manage clients that are active. And you have trend analysis down here as well. And then client check is your health. You obviously want all your clients to be healthy clients, which means they are functioning properly as Configuration Manager clients. Now, once you've got the client agent installed and they are active, now you can get into start looking at some information like how frequently are they reporting inventory. So are there any clients that haven't reported inventory in a specific period of time? And we already saw this in the console, but you can see discovery and inventory dates are all current for my clients. Now, I'm not using software inventory, so I'm going to ignore this because I don't think you should need to use software inventory in the vast majority of cases. So I'm going to ignore that. So I've got good inventory data for my clients. Great. I want better software reporting, so I'm going to go ahead and use Asset Intelligence. So I've got Asset Intelligence enabled. You can see that 60% of my software here in this chart has been identified by Microsoft. Let's go look at my software. I go cruising through here, and I got a whole bunch of software here. It tells me how many clients have that software installed and reporting in. But look at here, I got a whole bunch of SQL Server stuff here. I don't care about all that SQL Server stuff. I just want to know who has SQL Server database engine installed. But then if you scroll down, you actually even have more SQL Server stuff down here. So more SQL Server, just because of the fact it reports on everything that's related to SQL Server. Where I really probably care about this guy right here. That's the one I care about, but I got all these other entries for SQL Server. This is that normalization that we talk about. It's not really normalized very well at all in the Configuration Manager console. Well, let's look at reports. Maybe reports are better. So here's a single computer I'm looking at. And again, I could go back and look at previous computer, or a list of all my computers. But here's my single computer. And I see the computer domain, see its IP address, but it doesn't give me a real location. I don't know if that's in the New York City data center. I don't know if that's in the Redmond campus. I don't really know just by looking at that client. And here just it backed up to my previous clients. So I got some good information like the operating system, the top console user if there is one listed, serial numbers, asset tags, what type of computer memory and so on, but I don't have that detailed information I want. And if I go back to my client computer, I don't have any financial information here. There's no cost center to tell me which computer this belongs to, what purchase order or invoice this computer was acquired by, if it's a lease or got a warranty on it, what that contract status is. I can't tell that in Configuration Manager. Yeah, you could add some of that stuff for the registry or WMI and inventory it, but it's a one-off scenario. If I want to look at my software a little more detailed, let's go look at my software. So here's a report from Asset Intelligence, and I'm going to see the same basic information. I just have the software ID in here, but here's all those different SQL Server versions again. That's not what I want. I want to know who has SQL Server database engine, the actual product installed. It's pretty hard to tell that just by looking at a report. And If I want to look at software metering data, so here's a software metering report, which is good. It shows me all the computers that have run a piece of software over this past period of time. So that could be useful information, but I need to know who has it installed, and that may not be as easy to acquire as I want. So let's go ahead and spend a few minutes looking at Cireson asset management capabilities. So some of you guys might be managing your software assets through spreadsheets. Great. You're very familiar with Excel. It does wonders. It gives you a lot of good capabilities. Some of you might have a discovery tool, a management tool like Configuration Manager, which lets you be more managed in your asset management capabilities. There's also then the next step, which is Cireson Asset Management. Will let you be proactive in your software and hardware asset management as well as optimize. So let's go look at those capabilities real quickly here for you. You guys all know the System Center capabilities, so I'll blow past this slide, but there's obviously a ton of great capabilities inside of System Center. We're looking at configuration management and then a little bit in asset management. And if I build this out, you guys are familiar with the different aspects of System Center again. You see Cireson sitting in the middle there, along with Service Manager for that accumulation of all of your different products, whether you're in a Azure IaaS environment or you're on-prem with Hyper-V. One of the cool things with Service Manager as an engine is that it's got a CMDB. And when you have a CMDB, it's a great place for storing and manipulating your data through different components. So down at the bottom, you have System Center. So this is where you can have Configuration Manager providing data that's extracted and put in the Service Management database. You can have third-party tools like Cireson tools to provide additional data to that. You have different end-user portals, ways of getting access to that data, either through an email program, a mobile device, a web-based portal for reporting. And I'll show you some of those. So specifically on asset management, the Cireson solution extends what Service Manager does out of the box, which gives you very basic capabilities. And we give you the ability to support enterprise-based IT asset management, software asset management, as well as just pure asset management. So for hardware, we track by serial number, asset tag. We let you do bulk association of data to individual or bulk set of assets. Software, we provide a catalog. We do normalization, so you can now see who really has SQL Server installed as opposed to all those guys that have any little SQL Server utility installed. We give you licensing data, so you can associate licenses with your software and track how many licenses you still have available. There's different ways of doing authorization for your licenses, for your clients who's allowed to have this software installed. We allow you to tie that license data, your contractual data, your financial data to your hardware and software assets so that you have the ability of really managing those assets through the life cycle. If you want to track software usage, Configuration Manager we mentioned has software metering data. Very easy to create some rules. There's some automatically populated rules, and you can go ahead and create your own rules if you want to see who is running software. That's great. Then in Service Manager, there's a connector that Cireson provides that will let you go and extract that data from the ConfigMan site database and pull it back over into the CMDB and Service Manager. So now you have that software metering data along with your hardware and software asset data that comes from Configuration Manager. And now you can go ahead and calculate your license positioning based on usage rather than installations, and you can determine whether or not you should be able to reclaim any licenses that are not being utilized. And just a couple more slides and I'll do a demo for you in the Cireson solution, and then we'll get it back over to Neil for wrapping up our webinar. So I'll show you the different user experiences in demo coming up here momentarily. You have the full Service Manager console, which is great for your administrators, your service desk analysts, your change managers, and your asset managers can utilize the full Service Manager console. You may not want to go that route. You may want to utilize a web portal. So Cireson provides a web portal that's HTML5 based, web-based interface that works on any operating system, any platform, so you can utilize your mobile device just as easily as you can use your tablet, just as easy you can use your Surface versus your laptop versus your desktop, iPad, whatever it is. So it gives you great capabilities of utilizing a web-based portal for interacting with all of your asset management capabilities. And then for those of you that like Excel, because you may be living there today, we have a Asset Excel application that lets you stay inside Microsoft Excel, but still go ahead and access your asset data, manipulate your asset data, and get that data back into the CMDB so it's available in the web portal as well as the full Service Manager console for everybody else to view. So great capabilities there. We have a mobile barcode scanner that is available for iOS and Android devices that will let you go ahead and capture barcode information as well as interact with your asset data from mobile devices. And this slide is coming soon and actually is available now, so it's an old slide. Didn't get that updated, sorry about that. Okay, so let's go jump over and look at asset data for Cireson. So we showed you some of the limitations of the Configuration Manager environment. Let's go ahead and jump over to my Service Manager environment. And how you get your data from ConfigMan into the Service Manager environment is through something called a connector. So in Service Manager, there's a built-in connector that will let you extract data from Config Manager. So you just create a connector, a Configuration Manager connector. You specify whether you're running ConfigMan version 2007 or ConfigMan 2012. Once you've done that, and in this case it is specifying I'm a ConfigMan 2012 environment, you specify the database. So I'm going to this database server, this database name, I'm using this account to connect up. You specify which collection of clients in your ConfigMan database you want to extract the data from. This will be hardware data as well as software that's inventoried on those clients. And then how often you want to extract this data. So in this environment, I'm saying every day at 10 p.m. So you create that connector, you let it run. When it runs, it's going to add the data over to the configuration items workspace. And here's the type of data it's going to create for you. So it's these handful of systems here. It's going to go ahead and show you the information that extracts from Configuration Manager, including the last inventory date. So the last time these guys were inventoried. Now this is looking at different data than my ConfigMan environment. I'm looking at two different environments here. So they're not hooked, these two are not hooked up. So that's why the dates are different. But I'll show you the last time the data came from Configuration Manager. You can also add in additional assets that may not be in Configuration Manager. So you may have other computers that aren't being managed by Config Manager. Maybe you only manage workstations with the Config Manager, you want to get your servers in there. Maybe you have different locations that aren't ConfigMan based. Maybe you want to get routers, your network equipment in there, printers in there that aren't in your Configuration Manager database. You can add all those in as well to your asset management solution. For software, it's also going to pull in the software that was inventoried off your clients through Asset Intelligence, through installed applications inventory. So all that software is going to appear here, but it is going to appear in the, oops, I got to show everything, I guess, in the non-normalized platform. So it's going to show everything in non-normalized that says, in this case, SQL Server. There's going to be a whole bunch of things here that say SQL Server, 862 items, which may not be what you want to look at, but it does all pull over here. Now, once you install the Cireson Asset Management Solution, now what you get is the ability of, you get this new node up here called Asset Management. You get the ability of associating that contractual, financial, technical, business data along with your assets. So if you want to have cost centers, you go in here and create your cost centers. So go create a cost center, and let's say I go to IT Operations US. So I can go to that cost center, and if my Service Manager environment is going to respond, it should be zooming in there for me and accessing that cost center, and he is not a happy camper right this second. Oh, there it goes. All right, so now it's loading the form. So I can see the cost center information, the organization. I could have a custodian for it, but more importantly, I click on related assets. Here's all the assets that are related to that cost center. So very quickly I can find any of those. You see there's laptops, there's routers, switches, network devices, storage devices in there, there's a firewall. All these type of devices, I could pick any one of these devices and I could go ahead and open that asset up and view the resources for it. But I have my invoices. So I have invoices. I can look at all the invoices that I've used to acquire my assets. And if I go pick any one of these invoices, and I don't know which one I'm picking here, it says Juniper Networks, I can go verify the vendor information that I want, when it was received, what cost center, how much it cost. I can look at any assets, if I have any assets associated with it, any contracts that are associated with it. I can view all that data from one node here. Licenses for my software. So look at my software licenses, and I can view my software that I have licensed here, such as Adobe 7 Professional, if I have any licenses for it. I can view my vendor. I can see I have 100 seats allocated with 26 remaining. I can see my license key if I have ability of doing that. You can block that out. I can see the custodian, so who owns this, what cost centers it's related to, what resources are assigned to this software, any piece of software that is related to this license. All this data together. Maybe very important for you is locations. So I have locations. If I want to say U.S. headquarters, I can go to U.S. headquarters. I can see what subnets are associated with those U.S. headquarters. So here's my New York City data center. I could open up that, and I can see what locations are related to it. I can see what software and hardware is related to or associated with that location. So here's my software assets, here's my hardware assets, by a logical name, not an IP subnet that I might have. I also have purchase orders, purchases, my vendors. I have my contracts for warranty, support and maintenance contracts, leases, and then my hardware and software assets. So I can view all them inside the Service Manager console. Now that may not be the one you want to utilize, so let's switch over to another system that I have here is a Windows 8 client computer, which has the Service Manager console on it. So I can go ahead and view my hardware assets if I want to. So I can go ahead and view all those same hardware assets that I could in the console. I can do filtering if I just want to look at New York City resources. And bingo, there's all my New York City resources. I pick one of these resources. I'll take this one, open him up, and I'll be done here in just a second, guys. I can see my hardware ID. If I had a primary user from Config Manager with UDA, that would be brought over. I can see the manufacturer, the serial number. It's a deployed laptop computer. I can see the organization. If there's a location associated with it, I'd have it. I can see this has a warranty. I can see the warranty information. Its contract status is okay. It doesn't have a support and maintenance contract. If I go to the Finance tab, now I can see the cost center. I can see who owns it, not necessarily who's using it, but who owns it, the invoice and purchase order that this was acquired from. I could have the costing information here. I can see the vendor where I acquired this resource from. Any purchases, like the original purchase, maybe I purchased SSD drives later on, I could have those listed. Related assets, I might have some additional software that's tied to this client on this computer. If I'm utilizing Service Manager, I can see any incidents or service requests or change requests that are created for this specific asset as well. So I can do all that inside the Service Manager console. Well, maybe I want to use a different portal. So here's the Cireson portal. I can do my administration items. If I want to look at my cost centers or vendors, I can see all those inside the Cireson portal. If I want to look at my hardware assets, here's my hardware assets, and I can go ahead and view all those hardware assets inside the Cireson portal and manipulate them as well. So great capabilities here. This is not the same computer, but I can go ahead and just click on that one line item, which is one of the New York City computers, and I see all that same information. Just as if I was sitting inside the Service Manager console, I just don't have to have the console installed, and it's a much more reactive system, so it responds much more quickly to me than does the Service Manager console.
So Wally, I think we need to wrap up here. We're coming up to the top of the hour, and we've got a couple more points to make that I think will be beneficial to the audience. So,
Yep, there we go. And then I'll leave it with here. Here's the Excel spreadsheet. So I can utilize all that same data with Excel that I was looking at in the console, either Service Manager or in the Cireson portal. So very good. We have that. And with that, let me go ahead and you can contact us at team@cireson.com or PACE, which is the team I'm on, at cireson.com. And now I'll kick it back over to Neil to wrap us up.
Okay. So thank you, Wally. That was very informative and understanding the software products that Cireson offers that lets us get a lot more value out of Config Manager. And I meet with a lot of clients, do consulting with a lot of organizations, and especially I think the asset management, having a better system for managing license renewals and tracking assets would be a big value add for a lot of organizations, and also, having greater productivity on the help desk. There's a couple of other areas that we've helped customers to focus on in creating that, let's say, single pane of glass for extending SCCM. So I want to talk briefly to each of these. We could have a much deeper discussion. My goal here on this is more to make you aware of possibilities and maybe fuel some follow-up discussion versus going deeply into each of these topics. One of the obvious ones is antivirus. For most of you that own System Center Config Manager, you typically own it through the Core Cal on an enterprise agreement. And along with System Center Config Manager, you probably own System Center Endpoint Protection, the artist formerly known as Forefront Client Security. And it's essentially Microsoft's antivirus technology, but it's managed through the SCCM management console. So it gives you a greater degree of efficiency managing your client antivirus technology through SCCM versus having a whole separate set of infrastructure. Another area where you can realize efficiencies in terms of SCCM is there are integration modules to tie into Citrix XenApp and XenDesktop environments for software delivery so that the packages that you build in SCCM can be pushed down into a terminal services RDS environment running Citrix XenApp, or to effectively manage virtual machines running Citrix XenDesktop. So that's an area where, Citrix refers to this as the power of one, the idea of having one software package that's a universal installation. And you can also create integrations with AppV for Microsoft application virtualization. In addition, for those of you that do encryption, you might use a third-party product, or you might use Microsoft BitLocker. If you have software assurance on Windows, you now own, as a result of recent licensing changes, the Microsoft Desktop Optimization Pack, or MDOP. And the most commonly known component of MDOP is AppV for application virtualization. However, one of the lesser known components is MBAM, or the Microsoft BitLocker, actually administration module, not MBAM, MBAM. And MBAM essentially lets you centrally manage encryption, but through integration with SCCM, you can manage it from within SCCM. So again, we're bringing in a single pane of glass for these different features. For remote clients, there's a couple ways you can address them. Remote clients can be brought on network and managed through VPN or Microsoft Direct Access. You can also manage remote clients with free software that's part of SCCM called Internet-Based Client, which is essentially an SSL VPN for managing remote systems. It essentially is a web server that runs typically in a DMZ that allows remote systems to connect to and then be managed by SCCM. As an alternative to that, if you purchase a subscription to Microsoft Intune, which is Microsoft's cloud-based systems management technology, which you could think of as SCCM Lite. It does the basic things that SCCM does in many areas, but with less automation and a lower functionality level. But Intune can be used to manage mobile devices that are off network, and that can include managing them from within SCCM, as well as mobile devices like, Apple devices, Google devices, and Windows phones. So by integrating Intune with SCCM, you use Intune for cloud reach to off-network computers and mobile devices, but again, SCCM is the single pane of glass. And then Wally talked a little bit about System Center Service Manager, and Config Manager can be integrated with Service Manager to push its inventory information up to Service Manager for the ability, for example, for a user who submits a help desk ticket for the help desk to be able to see the inventory information for that user. So these are all very powerful integrations, and with a lot of clients, we've gradually added module by module, usually in a matter of days of effort or sometimes less, to get these functionalities up and running and create more value out of the investment in the SCCM platform. There are two third-party products that I think bear note that are partners of QTS and that we extend value on. These are pay-for products. One of them is Cireson, who was recently acquired by Flexera Software, I believe, has a patch management technology for third-party patches. It's actually a vulnerability scanner slash patch management technology that integrates within SCCM. So again, the idea here is use SCCM as the console, manage your Microsoft patches within SCCM, but then using the Cireson technology, also manage your Java, your Adobe, your other patches through SCCM to increase that staff efficiency. And by the way, also do vulnerability management on your clients through that technology. And then lastly, we just find more and more organizations are becoming hybridized with Mac clients, and there's very limited capabilities around Mac management in SCCM. There are some improvements roadmapped for Intune in that area, but with Parallels add-on software, these are the same people that make the software that lets Windows run on a Mac, but this is a separate pay-for product that lets you manage your Mac systems from within SCCM. So there's a lot of potential once you've got that basic foundation to start building on it in phases and really create a lot of value from that one management platform. So wrapping up in terms of conclusion and call to action and next steps, I want to talk for a second about the Microsoft Solutions Framework because this sets up some of the next steps. We follow the MSF in our project delivery as a methodology, and it starts with envisioning, what are the goals and objectives? Why are we doing this? What are we trying to accomplish? And then planning, what's the detailed planning that's occurring for how we want things to look and be configured. At the planning level, as well as the envisioning level, this is a great use for those of you that have enterprise agreements with Microsoft of Microsoft Planning Services vouchers. And there is a family of vouchers tied to Windows deployment, which can include SCCM if it's related to the Windows deployment, as well as System Center generally. In addition, on the MSF wheel, the next stage is developing or building the solution. QTS offers what we call quick start engagements, which are packaged service engagements, typically 3-day, 5-day, 7-day flavor with options for the different components of System Center, the Enterprise Mobility Suite, and frankly, a lot of other Microsoft technologies. They're knowledge transfer engagements, production pilot stand-up with very strong knowledge transfer to help customers get going. So if you don't have SCCM in place today, or if you're looking to upgrade to the most current version, this is a great way to get that upgrade or deployment accomplished, but with really strong knowledge transfer from our team. And then carrying forward, you're going to do testing, you're going to extend the solution and deploy it out to clients, etc. That's something that we do as part of our quick deploy methodology where we look at the whole life cycle. So that's how we approach the projects for deployment, and that ties in with next steps and a call to action for today. So first, for those of you that feel you've gotten value and maybe are interested in taking steps to build on this vision that hopefully Wally and I have helped to create, let's get together and talk by phone or in person and develop a roadmap and a strategy for SCCM, and we can also give you some insight into where Microsoft is going. If you have planning services vouchers under an enterprise agreement as a software assurance benefit, we can use those for a quick design engagement to plan out and architect how System Center will work in your environment. We can also offer quick start services to help you with getting these technologies up and running. And actually, our quick start for System Center Service Manager is based on another technology from Cireson around improving and enhancing that technology. Working together with Cireson, we'd love to explore how their solutions can help. And the client management solution is actually a download from the Cireson site, so that's a potential call to action for you as well if you see value there, and we can help you with familiarization and so on. Those are all good next steps. We have a event series on Windows 10 going on that's pertinent to these topics, so join us tomorrow in Islin, New Jersey, or next week in Philadelphia and Boston, or the week after in Hartford, Connecticut for that. So if you're interested, visit our website or look for email invites on that. And we'll be doing a webinar on November 11th called What is Azure and Why Should I Care? And Wally mentioned Azure and potentially hosting servers in the cloud, so that may be of interest to you relative to today's discussion. You can reach QTS at the phone number listed on the slide here or sales@qtsnet.com, and we look forward to building and continuing the dialogue after today's event. So with that, we'll open it up for questions. And Wally, I think you were going to look at the question board and see if there were any that had been posted, and we can also unmute the audience, but let's check first for posted questions.
And there were none posted, so.
All right, so let me open it up, or try to open it up. And if any of you
Muted. Muted.
All right, well, we're not getting any questions, but I'm also having some challenges with the muting or unmuting function. So if you have any questions, please post them through the chat window. And if we don't see anything shortly, we'll call it a wrap. Okay, well, I think we will, oh, we have a question. No questions, thank you for the presentation. Question, what type of options are available for Asset Management Infinity? Will machine's owner change whenever someone new logs in? I think that's probably more of a Wally question than a Neil question.
So I guess it means user device affinity. So yeah, what would happen is in Configuration Manager, it depends upon how you have it configured. There is the ability of having Config Manager automatically associate users and devices together based on usage information. If that's how you're setting up your UDA in Config Manager, and a new user does log on with enough time period to replace the previous owner of a device, then yes, during the next Configuration Manager connector cycle, when it extracts that data, it would change that in the Service Manager database. However, you can also set up UDA that's not based on usage, where you as the admin tie the users to the computers, and then it wouldn't matter if Neil logs on to Wally's computer, he would never change the primary owner or user of that device, so it would stay the same in the Cireson Asset Management solution. So there's a couple of different options there, it just depends on how you have it configured.
Okay, thank you, Wally. Are there any other questions through the chat window? With the Cireson Remote Manage app, you would still need to know the name of the machine first before gathering info.
Currently, yes. Yes, that is the case where you'd have to know the computer name. There are requests in. A common request is to allow you to connect up by IP address. So if you know the IP address of the device, to do so, as well as an ability of doing a lookup from the user to find the device. You can't just remote control a user. You always have to remote control a device or connect to it. So you would have to know the device name or its IP address. So there is a request to have IP address connections set up, but as of right now, it is device name, yes.
Okay, I'll take the next one. Will a recording of this webinar be available for later viewing? Yes, we have recorded the webinar, and we'll send out a follow-up to everyone with our calls to action and also with a link to the recording. And obviously happy to engage in follow-up discussion to address any specific questions. All right, any other questions? Thank you all for your time and for hanging in there with us running a few minutes over. Appreciate it. Going once. Going twice. Sold to Wally Mead from Cireson. We are a wrap. Thank you all for your time today and have a great rest of the day. Bye.